Welcome to the Future Resolution, Miles Mediation and Arbitration's podcast.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. I am Winter Wheeler. I am a mediator and arbitrator with Miles Mediation. I am joined today by my extremely special guest, Judge Verda Colvin. Hi, Judge Colvin. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine, Winter. I hope you are.
I'm hanging in there. We've got COVID going, but, I'm getting used to it.
And I love your name, Winter. That's beautiful.
Thank you. I kind of feel like it sounds like a weather forecaster or.
It's beautiful and different.
Thank you. I've been rolling with it for an undisclosed number of decades. So. Anyway, so Judge Colvin, you were sworn into the Georgia Court of Appeals on April 10th, 2020, and you were appointed by Governor Kemp. And so that already is like super cool, right? But you are the first Black woman to be appointed to the court by a Republican governor.
Yes, that's true.
All right. And before that, in 2014, you were appointed to the Superior Court. In 2014, I think I said that twice. Yes, that was 2014. Yes, correct.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Since I said it twice, I'm glad it was correct. By then, Governor Nathan Deal, and that actually made you the first Black woman judge in the Macon Judicial Circuit.
That's correct.
All right. Now, when I was doing my research on you, I was like, how inspirational of a resume can you have?
And I will tell you, it's not me, it's totally God. So I'm very spiritual. Okay. And the only thing I wanted to do throughout my career was make a difference. That was it. That's all. I didn't worry about the title, the prestige, the money, what I was doing. I just wanted to make a difference. And maybe just having that ideal was what prompted me to be able to move to where I am.
I love that. I seek to make a difference, and I don't think that I am.
Yes, you are. You don't know who's watching you.
That's true. That's very true. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. So let's start out by talking about how you got here. How you got to where you are and how you got this inspirational resume. I know, right? That's a long conversation. But you are an Atlanta native, right?
I am. Born and raised in Atlanta, went to Atlanta public schools.
Wow. Okay. And there's not a lot of you.
Exactly. I tell people all the time, I'm one of the last few Mohicans, actually born and raised in Atlanta. So most people think, and you left? And I was like, yeah, life took me away from Atlanta and Macon is my home now. And so I love it. So I'm still here.
That's awesome. And, I have been to Macon very few times in my life. I mean, I'm not an Atlanta native. I'm actually a native of Miami. Woohoo.
Okay.
But I have been in Atlanta for 10 plus years. I moved here. Wow. I hadn't thought about this in a while. Summer of 2019. So I've been here for a long time, built my family here, but not a native. So it's always really exciting to talk to someone who is a native. And you guys always have like a very different perspective on life. And it's something that I love to hear about, but definitely don't relate to. And I don't know what it is about.
That's interesting that you say that. What do you mean when you say we have a different perspective?
You just have, you guys have like a toughness about you, like a resilience that my people don't have. I don't know what that is. And it's not like Miami. It's like this like simple place to grow up either. But people in Atlanta have like you guys have like a Southern pride that is just a bit different. You know, Miami is always considered like a different country, really. Like, you know, they call it the capital of South America. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But you guys have a different kind of feel to you, and I love it. And I think that's part of what drew me to Atlanta in the first place. You know, I came up here a lot to visit, and I eventually did move here because my now husband was living here when we got engaged. But I wanted to move here anyway. Like, I was already drawn to the city, and I was drawn to the people here. And I think that's part of it. You guys just have a very strong sense of community and a strong sense of self. And it's just a very different kind of place. The atmosphere in Atlanta is electric. And I know that's kind of cliche, but
you know, it's funny that you say this. It's funny that you say this because I don't share this. I don't think I've ever shared this publicly, although people who are close to me, my family and friends, know this. But I think you're right about who we are collectively as a people, as Atlanteans, because I remember I did not realize that African Americans were a minority until I was about somewhere between the age of 14 and 15. And I went to visit my father, who my parents were divorced, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was at the mall then, and everyone I saw was white. And his girlfriend was with me, and we were on the balcony. And I said to her, wow, why is there so many, you know, white people here? I just, you know, that was amazing to me. And she said, well, you know, we're a minority. So I didn't let on then because I was kind of embarrassed. So I went back to my dad's house, called my mom, and I said, Mom, are we a minority? And she said, yes. And I said, wait a minute, there are less Black people in the world than white people? And she was like, Verda, yes. I was like, oh my God, I did not realize that because my whole world, what I saw reflected me. From the mayor at the time to people in local government, my community, my school. And so I think growing up in that shell, if you will say that, led me to believe that I thought anything was possible. I could do anything, despite the fact that I didn't see that in my own lineage. It was possible. And so it did instill in me a sense of pride and like, okay, I can just do this. And I never thought, I guess I hadn't shared that story publicly because I never thought through what that meant. And I think you hit it on the head before you even knew. There was a certain thing I got from being born and raised in Atlanta that I never realized until you just said that, because that was my world. And so to me, that was the world. And so it's funny how having someone outside of your world can add some kind of, you know, a window into why you thought and felt the way you felt. So that's when I found out I might be different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, and maybe, yeah, that probably is it. Because coming from Miami, where I was not only an ethnic minority, I was all types of minorities in Miami. And I don't really need to go into that. Everybody knows what Miami is like. But and then coming here and just, you know, having all these people who looked like me, sounded like me, you know, spoke the same language that I did. It was just an amazing feeling and kind of just like a very comforting kind of feeling. You know, and obviously, you know, for me growing up in Miami, I mean, I'm just used to everything, but it was just like a cool kind of fun feeling. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah. It's embarrassing as an adult now to look back on that, but I guess that shows when your world is encompassed in a certain area, you take that thought on, that becomes your reality.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really important when we look back as adults, and we have that perspective. I think it speaks a lot to what we need to work on for our children.
Exactly.
And making sure our children are, you know, not necessarily, I think you used the word shell, right? Not like hidden a shell, right? But told specifically, like, you can do anything, like, it doesn't matter. You know, and for kids who don't grow up in Atlanta, you know, where they know that they're the minority, it doesn't matter what color you are. You can grow up to do all of these things. And we make sure that, you know, kids of every color know that they have opportunities and they have abilities, and we give everyone the opportunities to succeed. I think that that's a really great, I don't know, let's turn it into a case study, right? Can I turn you into a case study?
Yeah, why not?
I don't think you have time for that. But if you did, it would be a great study. Yeah, you know, children are so important. And I think that sometimes we project our feelings and emotions on children instead of evaluating how we feel and how we could make their lives better. We kind of project what we want. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would like this, so I'm just going to tell my kid this instead of I felt this way because, so I'm going to change the way my kid's environment looks so that they can develop their own feeling.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's great. I think we just changed somebody's life.
Well, good. I'm glad. And, you know, the funny thing about it is when you allow your children to experience their own truth, sometimes you can see yourself grow through them.
Right.
So, and I've done that. I've been able to see that with my son when he came along, and my daughter, who's 8 years younger, I could see that in her. And so, to me, those are the things that should give us pride as parents when we see our children evolving further than where we were. And further, because that gives us hope for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and I come from a family of doctors and lawyers. And so it was kind of expected for me to become a lawyer. And so I don't really share this story either, but I didn't want to be a lawyer. I went to Georgetown. I was in the School of Foreign Service, and I wanted to go into the Foreign Service. I really wanted to be an ambassador. And I mean, that's actually not something I've given up on. So hit me up.
Yeah.
But when I was graduating from Georgetown, it was right after 9/11. My parents did not want me to continue living abroad. I was living in Spain at the time. And they said, well, you either move home and go to law school, or you start supporting yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly the conversation that we had. And God knows there was absolutely no way that I could support myself. And I was extremely privileged, I'll say, nay, spoiled. And I was not, you know, being 20, 21. I was not in a position where I wanted to give up the niceties and the luxuries that I had to chase this like kind of dream of going into the Foreign Service. And so I ended up going to law school, and my parents continued to support me, and I moved to New Orleans and started school. And I was like, I don't even know that I like this. At least the first year, because the first year was terrible. But
so you're normal then.
Right. It's terrible for everybody. So you know, and my family members who were attorneys were like, no, that's normal. It's okay. Like, you don't like the first year. There's nothing weird about that. So I kept going, and then I became a lawyer, and I loved it. I absolutely loved being a litigator. So I was like, oh, all right. So I guess this is okay. And I just kind of went on with it, and then fell in love with the idea of being a mediator. I think that's its own podcast, but so with all of that in mind, I guess, how did you come to the realization that you wanted to be a lawyer? Like, growing up in Atlanta, where you knew you could be anything in the world, like, you never had any thought that you couldn't, right?
Well, my trajectory was very different than yours. Neither of my parents attended college. My mom worked in food service at Coca-Cola Company, retired there after 40-something years. My dad was employed with the Equal Employment Commission. He happened to get on as an investigator and did his time there, ultimately retired. And so I had no one to look to who was doing what I thought I wanted to do. No one in my family was a lawyer. I had an aunt who had gone to college and finished UGA, but that was an aunt. So it was no one in my immediate sphere that I dealt with every day. But what made a difference for me and kept me going was my mom did something very inspirational for me, and that's just for me, when I was very young. Her best friend in high school, public high school, was a young lady who ended up graduating valedictorian. And my mom said when she knew her, she wanted her daughter to go through the same structure that she had gone through, which was a private religious school. So when I was born, my mom enrolled me in this private religious school. It happened to be a 7-day Adventist school. Some people in Atlanta may remember Berean Junior Academy. And so she enrolled me in that school. And as a result, I had a strong and still have a strong spiritual basis for everything that I do and who I am. And so that strength, that spiritual strength, is what led me to believe I could do and be anything. So when I was in first grade, and I had been going to this private religious school since I was in pre-K. So in first grade, when you're starting to learn figures, we had Bible every day, so we studied Jesus Christ, and of course we studied Martin Luther King as we were going along. I was so moved by the fact that they gave up everything about self for the greater good of others, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that wasn't about me, that was about empowering other people and helping other people, because my thought is that would make my life worthwhile. And so everything I did from that point on was geared toward, I want to do something to make a difference. I want to make somebody's world and somebody's life better. And so when I was in school, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and my mom and I talked about it. She said, well, you need to be a lawyer because you love to talk. Okay, I'll be a lawyer because, you think about medical school, law school, and I thought, well, I'll be a lawyer because to me that seemed to be in the line of social justice, doing good for others. And so I just kept that going. I had a lot of things to kind of get in the way when I was in undergrad. When I got out, I was trying to think about, I wanted to do Peace Corps, but I didn't come from parents who had wealth. And so my mom couldn't afford to take on the little bills I had while I did a year in the Peace Corps. So that wasn't an option. And then I thought about what I wanted to do, which was law school. And so I decided I'd do it. At one point, I thought about being a paralegal, and luckily someone along the way said to me, if you're going to pay for paralegal school, you should go to law school. Why spend that money and not invest in what you really want? So that led me to my trajectory of going to law school. And then thereafter, everything I've tried to do, I did with a sense of wanting to do something to make a difference. So my first gig out of law school was working for a civil rights firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was different in nature. It was the way the world should be. And so I'll give them a shout out. Ferguson, Stein, Watt, Wallace, Atkins, and Gresham. It has changed since then, but when I joined, that was the name. And they had a wild concept. Their firm was purposely and intentionally diverse. So they had women, they had men, they had an Asian American, African American female, African American males. I mean, they purposely kept the firm that way. So when they lost someone, they tried to find someone to fill that space because they wanted a firm that reflected the world. And that, when I met them, I was like, wow, this is utopia. So I joined that firm, and I worked there for 3 years. And firm life is different. And so when I realized I couldn't do all that I envisioned doing, which was really giving of myself to help, I decided I would take an offer from one of my former directors of our mock trial program at University of Georgia, Ken Malden. At the time, he was solicitor in Athens, Clarke County. And so I thought, I think I could do misdemeanors. That's not really doing really working for the man. I think I could do that. it's 12 months, $1,000 fine. Okay, I can do that. So I started working there. And that's when I had realized it at the firm because I did some defense work and other civil work. But when I was at the solicitor office, that's when I realized that was my gift, litigation. I was born to be a litigator. And so I just loved it. I had the chance to work with Judge Steve Jones, who is now on the Northern District Court. He was a great teacher, so I cut my teeth with him, worked there for 2 years, and then from there, I went to Clark, Atlanta, worked as assistant general counsel. That was an experience. That's a whole nother podcast. That was an experience, but great school, great students. But working in the office was just a different experience. And from there, I went to work with Clayton County DA's office and loved it, every minute of it, had some great colleagues. And after I worked there a while, decided to go up higher in prosecution and went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The first person to make an offer to me was Beverly Martin, who's also now on the district court. And she made an offer to join the Macon office, and I did, and loved every moment of it. I had, in fact, made up in my mind, I knew I was going to retire there. I decided after retirement, I was going to then be background investigator to do background checks for federal employees. I had this whole map for my life. That's what I was going to do. And I was there for 14 years until the U.S. attorney at the time, Michael Moore, came to me in my office and closed my door and said, "Can we talk?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "There's going to be a position."
You were like, "Wait a minute," when he first came in.
Right. What did I do wrong? I don't think I did anything wrong. But he was like, "There's going to be a position opening up on Superior Court. And I think Macon is ready, and I think you're ready. I think you should put your name in." So my boss came in my office and said, "Can we talk?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "There's going to be an opening in Superior Court. I understand Judge Brown will be retiring." He said, "Macon, I think, is ready for this, and I think you're ready for this. And I want to nominate you for consideration for this position. But I don't want to do it if that's something you're not going to pursue." And so, I was so flabbergasted. I never saw that. One of my girlfriends told me during my swearing in that I had said in high school that I wanted to one day be a judge. Totally have no recollection of that. Totally none. But I said, well, let me pray about it, because Mr. Moore and he was my boss, but he was also a confidant. He was a friend. And so he understood who I was. And I said, well, let me pray about it. So I'll never forget, I went to the window in my office and I looked out, and, I had been praying for some years before that, "Lord, I feel like it's something else you want me to do." I was very involved in the community, very involved in my church, but I just kind of had this yearning that I was supposed to do something else. But, different things that I pursued, I thought, well, I won't do it, because I thought about going to D.C. with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they were telling me how they have to have everybody start at the bottom again, work up, because of all the things that come about when people transfer offices, so to make it fair. And I didn't know if I wanted to make that transition and start from the bottom again. So I stood at the window and I thought, is this the more you want me to do? And so, of course, fear crept in, because here I am, a single mom raising 2 kids. One is about to go to college the next year. And I'm thinking, I got to run for office every 4 years, And then I thought of something. At the time, I was a Sunday school teacher for the youth at my church. And it's something I tell them all the time. I say to them, whichever is your dominant hand, most kids, it's the right hand, most of us it is. I said, whatever your dominant hand, that's the hand that the angel sits on, that represents Christ. And your weaker hand, that's the shoulder that the devil sits on, the spirits that try to take you down, to get you to do the things that you shouldn't do. I said, sometimes when you're sitting in class or you're doing something in life and you feel that shoulder where the devil sits pushing you to do something that you shouldn't, I just want you to just kind of brush your shoulder. Nobody has to know what you're doing, but always let the angel prevail, because that's where your faith lives. That's where your strength resides. And so you just brush your shoulder to remind yourself you're going to brush him off, because he's not worthy of your time. And so God, my spiritual source had that come back to my mind. And I said, Verda, how can you tell those kids to brush off fear? And you're standing here looking out this window when you've asked for more, to do more, and you're not brushing off that fear. And I say this all the time, faith and fear can't reside in the same household. Either you're going to have faith or you're going to have fear. Which one is going to motivate you? And so a tear fell from my eye, because I I made myself deal with the truth that I tell others. And I said, Lord, I'm going to move on faith and not fear. I'm scared to death because what will I do if I don't have this gig when my son is in the middle of college? My daughter's in a Catholic school. What will I do? I'm all I have. But I said, you know, you've got me this far. So I'm going to brush off that fear and I'm going to move in faith. And so I said to him, I said, if you want me to have this, then you'll move things out the way, because federal offices are boutiques. And so people don't really know us in the state system because we stay in our little world. Right. And, you know, I was guilty of that, staying in my little federal world. So the attorneys who practice in the state system, unless they worked in the federal system, they didn't really know me. So I said, God, I'm going to do what they asked me to do. I'm going to do my 3 references. I'm not going to try to talk to people to do political favors. If this is what you have for me, then you'll move. I don't have to do all that. You'll move whatever you've got to move to put me where you want me to be. And at the end of the day, if that's not where you want me, I'm fine just working in the vineyard right where you have me, because there's so many people I've been able to help in that federal system. So I was fine with that. And so I just did just the basics, what you're supposed to do. I didn't do anything extra. Everybody who reached out to me because they decided to reach out to me, not because I was calling in favors or asking, because I wanted God to show me that this was what he'd have for me. So when I made that short list, I said, well, Lord, you at least want me to meet the governor. So I said, I'm going to do that. But this is the only thing I ask you to do. Help me to represent Macon well. So when I leave that room, he'll have a even stronger impression of what and who Macon, Georgia is, because I just want to shine for us here. Because, you know, we're not Atlanta. We're not suburban Atlanta. So I know sometimes people may discount all that we have to offer in this community. And I wanted to make these residents proud of what we had here and to let the governor know we were a force to be reckoned with. And so when I walked out of there, everybody wanted me to call. And I said, the one thing I can tell you, I don't know what'll happen, but I knocked it out the box. I have never left an interview and felt so proud about what I had done. So when he called me to ask me if I would be the Superior Court judge in the Macon Judicial Circuit, I made him a promise. I said, I will never disappoint you and I will never embarrass you. I will always do my best to be my best. And he said, I know you will. And that's the same thing I told Governor Kemp when he called me for the Court of Appeals. I will promise you I will always do my best. I may not be perfect, but I will always give you my best. And he in turn said the same thing. I have no doubt. And so the only thing I told myself throughout this whole journey is I just want to be excellent and to do my best. And I just believe when we do that, things will open up for us in ways that we can't even envision. And that's why I say to you, that dream of being an ambassador, don't let that go. Because if you just keep being excellent, doing what you're doing, the source, whatever you want to call the source, will open doors that you can't even envision. Because if someone would have told me I'd be sitting here on a podcast with you as the newest Court of Appeals judge in the state of Georgia, I would have been like, you're just as crazy as a bat, you know. But, you know, here I am. And maybe part of it is because I always acknowledge it's not me. None of it is me. I'm just a vessel and I allow myself to be used.
Oh my God. Like, I don't even have like a response because like the room I'm in, like, listen, I'm sitting under like a bunch of bright lights. Cause I mean, I know this is a podcast, but we also record for the video, for those of you who don't know. And I mean, I have like goosebumps like crazy because it's not like cold in here. Oh my God.
As I was telling you some of that, tears were in the back of my eyes because I'm just reliving it and thinking it's amazing.
It is. And like, whew.
I mean, who would have thought a little girl with a mom who, you know, made below poverty level, but who always told me, we don't say can in this household. There's will and won't, but we don't say can. And, you know, and that's kind of how I went through life. And I went through without a chip on my shoulder. And never using the fact that I was African-American or female to make me feel like that was something I couldn't do or achieve.
You always knew who you were, and you always relied on God, and you kept moving. You kept
exactly.
You kept it moving. You
exactly.
prepared. You know, it's like people people make fun of me because I'm always preparing for something that's like not happening. And I mean, like from like silly things. Like, so recently I did the Florida set of classes to become a certified mediator there. And my husband was like, you going to Florida? I'm like, I'm from Florida. So, I'm going to do this. And he's like, but you don't need to do that. And I'm like, you don't know what I need.
You
like,
never know when they come up.
What I need. And so that kind of a thing, or just, taking more classes than anybody really needs to have. But I just like to be ready. And so I kind of feel like it's like the same type of thing. If you stay ready, you are ready.
Exactly.
When God calls, when the Spirit calls, or whatever you want to call it, you are ready. Just
exactly.
Stay in that faith, stay in your position, and be ready. You just
because the one thing I found out through all of my journeys, and Winter, you've got to know this, and anyone listening has to know this. You don't ever know who's watching what you do and taking note, so that at some moment in time, they can pour into who you are and who they see you becoming. And that's something I never had a clue of. All the people throughout my trajectory who have said words of encouragement or helped me along the way without me even asking. I just never would have ventured that anyone was paying attention to little old me.
Oh, absolutely. And along that same line, like right before we got on this call to do this podcast, I was on Facebook, just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw this now woman. And she has a very popular podcast now, and she has like an online show, and she comes from a very successful political family. I won't mention the name. I'll tell you offline.
Okay.
But, before she went to college, I think she's like 5 years younger than me or something. And I was at Georgetown, and she called me up, and she was just so nervous about like just the thought of preparing for the SATs and things like that. And I was like, let me just like walk you through it. And I think I spent like an hour with her at like, I don't know, a Starbucks. Mm-hmm. And this was a girl I've known, her entire life. Like, she was teeny tiny, and I'm like, I could spend an hour at Starbucks with her. This is not a big deal. And it meant, and not that it meant nothing to me, but it took nothing from me.
Exactly.
And it was just something that I could do for her. And it meant the world to her. And I didn't even know it at the time, but she told my parents about how important it was to her. And I heard about it later, about how big of a deal that was. And so I'm kind of in this like transition point in my life where I'm making all of these career changes, and I'm thinking about starting my own podcast and all of these things. And so I came upon that, and I was like, maybe I'll reach out to her and ask her about like what she's been doing and how she made these changes. And it just kind of brought me full circle. Like, I reached out to her years ago, never expecting anything, never wanting anything, never thinking anything of it, and just giving what I had because I had it. And, maybe I could reach out to her and ask her, some simple questions. And it's just like, you never know who's listening to you. You never know who you're giving to. And
what we don't realize sometimes, when we empower others, we're really empowering ourselves.
Yeah.
I get the most out of speaking words of encouragement and being inspiring to others. And that gives me my bump to kind of keep going on. And I think sometimes in the world, if we recognize that and really, leaned into that, what we could do for each other and for our community and for the world at large is phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it's so true. You never think about it. Mm-hmm. And you have these interactions with people daily, and you never think about it. And with the internet and these improvements in technology, people are able to find you and let you know now.
Exactly.
But the impact that you might have had on someone else's life at some point, you just don't even know. Just that little bit of kindness that you may have given because that's just who you are. You can change someone's entire trajectory, change their entire life. And it's a blessing. And I don't know. I have like, I'm like feeling all over from just this conversation. It's crazy. But, I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about criminal law and changes in criminal law. And we're seeing a huge push right now for various reasons for systemic changes, right? And I know that you in 2014, when you took over, when you took your seat on the Superior Court, you started running the mental health court, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you started to implement changes. Can you tell me about what you did to enhance that court?
Well, primarily I did what the Council for Accountability judges have found to be evidence-based, and that's programming that helps people and meet them where they are. And so what I think I brought to the program is accountability, which is one reason why we're called accountability courts. Meeting people where they are at their need, and those things include a lot of different things. Cognitive behavioral therapy, MRT, which is moral recognizant therapy. We had personal therapists who many people would see on their own. We work with doctors and our CSB, which is River Edge and the Macon Circuit. But all of those things I think are encompassed in they have to be encompassed in every mental health court program, which we changed the name to Making Healing Count. People thought of me as a different kind of judge, and I guess I was, in that I kind of did things a little bit outside the box. I really listened to my participants, and what I kept hearing is that it bothered them that people labeled them, and I would always talk to them about, you are not a label, and don't allow people to give you a label or make a label. And so we changed the name of our court to Making Healing Count, to still have the MHC acronym letters, but to change that name to be something positive, because that's what we were doing. And so what I tried to do was inspire them and encourage them, and to, most importantly, let them know that they mattered and they had something to contribute to society and to our world. And that labels are things that people use when they're uncomfortable with situations that they don't deal with themselves. Oh. And so, I told them, I said, that's about other people. That's not about you. And don't allow them to put their stuff on you. And I also, did a lot of talk therapy, in that I reminded them that everybody needs to talk to some therapist at a time or two in their lives. We really need to have one on speed dial at all times. And so I'm a big proponent in therapy, seeking help. Sometimes it helps to talk through somebody who's not intimately connected with the problem. And so the mental health court, I found, was the most profound thing I did while sitting on the Superior Court bench. It meant the most to me. My participants are still people who I call. In fact, I said I'm going to call them this week because I try to check in with some more often than others, just to see how they're doing and let them know that I care. But I did other accountability courts too, parenting court, family violence court, because all of those courts help bring people to where they ideally want to be and should be. And I think things like that help transform and reform our criminal justice system, because everything can't be cured by incarceration. We know that. And so when you know better, you do better. And so I tried to be a part of the process of doing better.
Yeah, and that's kind of like part of the larger question of whether our criminal justice system is about retribution, or if it's really about making better people and helping people get to their full potential and overcoming whatever obstacle it is, whatever got them to where they are. And so a lot of the time we know that that's mental health issues, and mental health issues are often tied to drug-related issues and drug-related offenses. I mean, those things go hand in hand for sure. And we're seeing a lot of, the mental health courts pop up all over the place, and we're seeing those with the drug courts popping up, and it's very important, I think, that we're taking a different approach to it than courts were taking, let's say, in like the 80s and the 90s, when we had the crack epidemic. and we were just locking people up for life, and destroying families and whatnot, and just, simply throwing people away. Really, I mean, there's really no nice way to put that. There's still a lot. There's still a lot that we can do in this country to, I guess, chip away at that stigma. But things are definitely changing, and changing for the better. And it's, I don't know, it's I guess it makes me feel positively, I guess, about our system, that people are really starting to take that seriously. And another thing that I don't typically tell people, look at you're getting me to like spill all the tea.
That's what makes people interested.
This tea is not super hot though, but whatever. I was a public defender for a little while when I first came out of law school, and it was not the fit for me. It just was not. So and I think this is what makes me a good mediator. I take on people's feelings. Mm-hmm. I really get involved in their lives, like, very easily and very quickly. And so I would spend I couldn't sleep. I was like in the life of the defendant, the life of their family, the victim, their family. I was a wreck. Yeah. I couldn't do it. And I can laugh about it now because it was so long ago, but I was a mess. And so I would go and I would talk to my supervisor about, like, this cannot be the only way we're doing this. Like, okay, so he ran a red light. I got it. And he didn't have a license. Okay. But he got arrested for that. And so now he might be deported. But his wife is a citizen and they have 3 kids. And so what is she supposed to do if he gets deported? Like, okay, but who did he hurt? And so, these were like the little things. And I say little. Mm-hmm. Like, these were the things in like my misdemeanor court out in like the middle of nowhere. It was a little town outside of Tampa that I was working in. And I just would stay up at night thinking about these things, like, how am I helping? Yeah. And I felt like I was like a little cog in this machine that was kind of being used to hurt people at that time. And so I was just like, it's going to take me a really long time to be part of this machine that can actually help. Yeah. And I don't want to spend any amount of my time potentially hurting people. This just is not for me. God bless the people who can do it. Yeah. But I have to get out of it. And I think I did it maybe 9 months, and I bolted, I ran, I couldn't do it. So when I hear about people who can do, criminal law and in the capacity of a public defender, a prosecutor, I give you all the props, because I don't, present tense, I do not have the capacity for it. And so I just, when we talk about the bigger picture, like, it's easy for me to sit here and wax poetic about what should be happening. But when we talk about people who are on the front lines, and, of course, a judge, like, you really, you are really on the front lines. You really have the ability to make positive change and to genuinely help people. And my God, like, for you to still be reaching out to the people who desperately needed your help, and to give them that help, and to reach out that hand when they needed it the most. Hats off to you. My gosh, I couldn't bear that burden as a teeny tiny little public defender at the bottom rung.
Oh, no, that's not teeny or tiny. And, I would feel when I sat on the Superior Court bench, I would feel for the public defenders, because I know they were boxed in. And I know at times maybe the prosecution felt how can I say this? That I was always mindful that we're dealing with human lives, and these are people, and the prosecutors who were in my courtroom, I tried to help them grow to think beyond the easy. The easy is, and it's sometimes you get in a fix where you start doing that as a judge, but I think we're duty bound to think beyond the easy, to look at ways in which we can administer justice, but also ensure that we're taking into consideration all the components that are encompassed in this thing that we call our judicial system. And that is hard. It takes more than just a cursory glance or just looking at the statute that determines the penalties. It takes thinking outside the box. So for instance, I remember one situation I had, and maybe I shouldn't share this, but I will because it's public record, so I might as well. Had a young man come before me. He had committed an offense 3 years prior, so 3 years ago. In that 3-year period of time, he had started college, was a college student, and doing fairly well in college. I mean, progressing along. But as a result of the stance of the prosecution, he would have a conviction on his record. He had never been in trouble before and hadn't been in trouble in those 3 years while his case languished.
Yeah.
It was problematic to me as a jurist to sit there and to see a young man's future might be, thwarted by having this conviction that obviously reflected an indiscretion on his part, but apparently he had gotten it together and realized that is not the route I want to take. And so, as I sat there, I'm constantly thinking in my mind, what's the right thing to do? Show me what I'm supposed to do, taking all of these things into consideration. There was no offer for him to do pretrial diversion, which would mean the case would go away and he would just, do community service or something like that, which is probably easy for a college student to do. And the only option that was given to me as a jurist was, well, you could consider first offender if you want to, but I'm not willing to do anything differently. And we have to respect the prosecution's stance. But I was so encouraged and amazed by my ability to think outside the box. Recognizing he was going to be finishing college soon and getting ready to apply for jobs or internships, what I did in some ways, in my mind, he had already been on probation for 3 years while he was waiting for this offense to come forward or to go away. And so what I did, I put him on probation for one 24-hour period under first offender. And I said, if you could successfully complete your probation in 24 hours, you will not be convicted of a crime in this case. And so you will be finished with your sentence. That was a novel way to think outside the box. I did not want that to affect his ability for internships and his job. The only thing I was left with was the ability to treat him as a first offender, and I could decide how long that period would last for, active probation. So I finagled the sentence where it could reflect the prosecution could get what obviously they wanted, which was, the conviction of sorts, and the defendant can move on with his life and not have that as an excuse of why he couldn't succeed in life.
Wow.
And so those are the kind of things that, as an appellate judge now, I think sometimes I hope somebody else will do those think outside the box, will make those avenues to ensure that people have a future that's bright and not, ruined because of one mistake, particularly when that mistake isn't brought to light for 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's amazing that you came up with that. And I have a feeling we're going to start to see more of that, given COVID and how slow things are moving. I was reading an article this morning about how we're seeing an uptick in some minor crimes right now and how they're not being handled because people are, we're not putting as many people in jail because we don't want to. We don't want to subject people to COVID. And then also, because we don't have the ability to get people through, that initial the word escapes me right now, but we can't get people through like first appearance and all that right now. So a lot of people just aren't being arrested for some of these things. So we're seeing a lot of minor crimes happening, but it makes a lot of sense that for like the type of thing that you're talking about, even if you are arrested for something relatively minor, you don't have a history and you don't reoffend. So this comes up, 3 some years from now. What do we do with that person? And they've clearly moved on. They made a mistake, yeah, but now they're an adult who needs to move on with their life. What do we do? And yeah, thinking creatively and coming, getting outside of the box and coming around to an acceptance of the fact that people make mistakes. We all make mistakes. What do we do? How do we help each other? I think that the answer that you came up with was brilliant. That made a lot of sense, and I'm sure you saved that young man a lot of heartache, and basically you saved his life. You changed his life, and of course that of his family and his future family. So hats off, my God. But that really brings me, I guess, to the final issue that I want to talk to you about. I'm not going to keep you here all day, although I certainly could. With all of the questions that I could have for you. But I guess restorative justice. When we think about, I'm a mediator, of course. So, I'm always thinking about the concept of mediation and everything that we do. If we think about the issue, the idea of restorative justice in the criminal justice system, I always I use the same example all the time. Obviously, the big one, which is, Rwanda and Gacaca, and how, after the massacres, how, the community came together and it's, they were able to resolve conflicts around you murdered my child, but you have admitted to it, you are apologizing, and I can forgive you. You can now be a part of society and not go to jail. These things were beyond belief and beyond the realm of possibility, I think, for a lot of Americans and the society that we live in and for the experiences that we have. So obviously on a much lesser scale, how do you think that type of system might work, if at all?
It's funny that you mentioned this because my son ran for public office here in Macon. And at one point, when he has issues that come up, we'll talk about it. He asked me about my thoughts on restorative justice and if that could be something that would happen. And I told him quite plainly, I think it's going to take a while for people to wrap their heads around that, but I could see it being something that's used in offenses that are not considered violent offenses or felonies. And as you were talking, I thought, man, wouldn't that be a great avenue to use with some of these offenses that are occurring now because of the social unrest?
Yeah.
If restorative justice is used there, because really what this is about is talking these issues through with one another in a way in which not only do we get heard, but we actually hear others and listen to their thoughts and their opinions. And in situations like that, restorative justice may be a way to move beyond the you're wrong, I'm right, into you need to hear me so that we move from these type of things happening and move into a better place as a society. So I think there's a lot of benefit from it. I think one of the reasons why we're in the pickle we're in is because people don't talk to one another and people definitely don't listen to one another. And we're unwilling to talk about the hard things, but that's how you get better. And, I think about it often in a family, think about it in your own marriage. You don't get everything you want every time you want it. And that person loves you to death, probably would die for you. So why do we think in a society, in a community, in a nation, that one voice would get everything it wants? We have to come together and talk and reason. And I know the dreaded word, compromise, people don't like to hear, but in a collective group, even in your immediate family, there has to be some compromise. Nobody agrees with everything all the time. And so restorative justice brings us to that place So I think it's something we should think about and implement, even if we can't do it in the traditional sense of, restorative justice means you have paid your penance and therefore you can move on. We ought to start incorporating that in some sense. I don't know, early probation, early release from probation or something to make that a possibility, because people can't ever understand the other perspective if they're not introduced to it in a real way.
Right.
But does that require we have a heart? Yes. Does that require we're willing to listen to each other? And does it require that we're willing to say that the next person has value and therefore they should be listened to? And those are matters of the heart. And so that's an inward thought that lands into an outward expression. And so, how do we get there? That's the question.
Oh, yes, indeed. And that is a big question. And I don't think we can answer that here on the podcast. Which means I think you have brought us to the conclusion of this recording.
Very good.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your time. Thank you for imparting your wisdom upon us here. I mean, I'm so excited.
And I'm excited to know you.
Thank you. When I reached out to you and you said yes, I was like, oh my God. My husband was just about sick of me. Because I was running around like, oh my God, she said yes, she's going to do it. And he's like,
but you know what? Let me say something to you, Winter, and everybody else who's listening to this. Public servants should always be willing to say yes to you. And sometimes saying yes does come at a price, I guess, because some people might think, well, I might say the wrong thing, or maybe they'll ask this. But that's what service is all about. It's not about self. It's about making yourself available for others. And so you should always be willing to ask any public servant to say yes. And I'm hopeful that they all will.
Oh, thank you so much. And in that vein, I will give another shout out to your fellow appellate judge, Ken Hodges, who also appeared on this podcast with me. So thank you so much, Judge Colvin. I appreciate you. Everybody who is listening, I'm sure they would say thank you personally, if they could. So thank you. I thank you on their behalf.
Well, I thank you, Winter Wheeler, on behalf of everyone who's listening for what you do and taking the time to make an investment in others.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Future of Resolution, the podcast. You can follow The Future of Resolution on Miles Mediation and Arbitration's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and subscribe, rate, or review this podcast. Join us soon for another interesting discussion. Thank you for listening.